All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nature Journal Show. Today we have a frequent guest of the show, Yvea. Yvea is an avid nature journaler, educator, and restoration ecologist, and she will be participating in the conservation panel at Wild Wonder, in addition to running Pencil Miles and Chill. Welcome to the show, Yvea.
Thank you. Good to be here with you again, Marley.
Great. I think you're up there in the people who've been on the show the most times. Maybe you've been on the show like 4, 5, 6 times, something like that. And for people who are just tuning in, this is going to be a fun conversation about stuff happening at Wild Wonder. Don't miss the lightning round. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the panel that you're going to be on. I already interviewed one other person that's going to be on the panel. So this panel on nature journaling and conservation, why do you think this topic is important, and how does it fit into the Wild Wonder Conference?
So I love that question. So conservation, that is us looking out for nature. That is us trying to make it so that there's enough nature left for nature itself to survive, most importantly, but also for us and our future generations to enjoy. And we're nature journalers. It's really challenging to enjoy the nature if there is no nature. And so that's why the conservation. Um,
Yeah.
I think that this panel is going to be super important because there's different ways of practicing conservation on the panel. We've got 5 incredible guests on it. I know that we've already gotten to meet Shane, who's amazing. We'll also be meeting Aisha, Amy Schlesser, and Ann Chadwick. And so like everybody has their own different ways of doing this. And how it fits into Wild Wonder is that for some folks, this is the why. This is the why we do this, is in service of nature, or this is next steps. Maybe what can we do now with this love of nature that we've been growing within our nature journals? We can advocate for it.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So it's hard to, I liked how you sort of made it really clear there. You said it's hard to nature journal and enjoy nature if there's no nature. So that's a good reason in and of itself, for this to matter. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about terms here, or defining some terms before we go in further. So, at the conference, the word conservation is being used, but there was also in the description of the panel, it also uses the word stewardship and nature connection. And I think last time that you were on the show about this topic, or one time we were on the show, and I'll share this link in a little bit, we were using the term that you often use for your work, which is restoration. Maybe we could talk, maybe you could share your thoughts on the names that are used, and the differences or similarities or anything like that.
Okay. So the similarities in all of those terms are about ways of trying to take care of nature or look out for nature. But some of the ways that they differ in that stewardship could be a bit more broad. It doesn't necessarily always have to mean nature. It could mean taking care of in general. So you could be a steward in your community, in your own backyard, in nature. Steward is pretty much does mean to take care of or to take responsibility for. So there's that. Conservation, I would think of as being more about protecting a specific area within nature, and that differs a bit from preservation, in my opinion, and restoration. Preservation is more about keeping things exactly the way that they are right now without a lot of changes. And so you might hear about preservation being spoken of maybe like old growth forests or areas where humans haven't had a lot of impact in the recent future. I mean, in the recent past. My apologies. So that's like, leaving things exactly as it is. Restoration would mean bringing back a degraded or destroyed habitat, oftentimes because of humans. And so I think of conservation as being in between the two of them, where it's a little bit more flexible about what it could mean. But it does largely mean protecting nature.
Cool. That was a great summary. Um, Speaking of summaries, maybe you could explain a little bit about the work that you do, and I'll post the link to this other conversation we had where we talked about that a lot more. But tell us about the restoration work you do and how you combine nature journaling into that work.
Absolutely. So my number one love is habitat restoration or restoration ecology. So there is this park here in San Francisco called the Presidio. It is part of the Golden Gate National Parks, which means that it's kind of this interesting interface between people and nature and history and a whole bunch of other things. and there are some really rare ecosystems in the Presidio. So my work is that I go and I take care of these rare ecosystems. A lot of what I do is pulling up plants that were left behind by the military, that they're not inherently bad plants. It's just that they have a tendency to unbalance things and to take over. And so because they outcompete some of the local species, I would like to promote biodiversity with the local species. Um, sorry about my.
No
So
worries.
my work is mostly that I pull out plants, or sometimes I plant other plants in, and so that we call that the restoration ecology. And then the other thing, more recent project I've been doing that I need to get back to, is that I've been interviewing other stewards here within the nature journaling community. The idea with that is to honor each person for their work that they do, and then also to broaden this idea of stewardship, so that way, for folks who might think that it's solely, going out there with a pickmatic and working on hard soils. I mean, yeah, it could be that, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that knowing that would make stewardship more accessible to more people, because we can't all necessarily go out there with a pickmatic. I mean, we might be in pain if we do that. And so there's other things that we can do to make our communities and our nature better places.
Cool. And so how do you use your nature journaling? So it's one of the things that first struck me was that you were one of the people that was, you're doing something very applied, to help nature, to help protect biodiversity. You're out there in the dirt, dealing with like challenging plants, pulling plants out, helping protect other plants, planting new plants. So it's very, very practical, very like easy to see how that's helping nature. But you're also one of the people who you were combining nature journaling with that very practical stuff. So could you talk a little bit about how you made that combination? And I did put the link to our other video that's all about that. But could you explain a little bit about how that combination worked?
Oh, totally. Um, so I do this for a number of reasons. For me, it's a way of remembering what I did out there in the field. So it's a celebration of the work, or maybe it's that I will be doing the work and then I meet a cool new plant or bug or somebody like that in the field. And I want to remember that instead of just forget. And so then I can write about my own emotions with that, or I can write about my questions. And that's a way of making sure that the work really sticks around and has that deep impact, because when we do our nature journaling, we let whatever we were journaling really influence us. Some big reasons why I also nature journal my work are that, so that if anybody else wants to do the type of work I do, they can look at my notes and see how I did it. Maybe they'll do the same thing. Maybe they'll improve on my process. If I myself write down what I do and then I discover a new and better way of doing it, that would be the reason why I write it down, is because then I could say, oh, that was kind of, that was difficult, or maybe there's an easier way of doing this exact thing. One example would be, I might nature journal about removing a bunch of poison hemlock that's growing incredibly tall during the summertime in really, really harsh soils. And that takes a lot of work, and that we usually wind up cutting the hemlock off at the
Mm.
soil level. And I might think, well, I kind of wish we were more thorough and not having to do that in such a horrible season. What if I were instead to wait until the winter season when the soil is soft and from the rains, and then I remove the hemlock, and then I give myself less work for the summertime. And maybe I don't have that revelation unless I'm nature journaling it. So
Hmm.
those are a few reasons why I might nature journal my stewardship work. And then final reason is to advocate for that kind of work, so that people will fall in love with the same place that I have by my own,
Cool.
through my journals.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So, in a time that is objectively, by a lot of measures, a planetary crisis, by, you know, um, geochemical measures, all kinds of biodiversity measures, and things like that, um, suggest that we're basically in a sort of planetary crisis. What are the things that you think are actually needed to help save the environment right now? So, there's, people can recycle, people can pick up trash, people can plant native plants, people can like reduce their carbon footprint. It seems like there's a lot of different things people could try to do. What do you think from your experience is something that is actually the most needed or most impactful?
Well, okay, a few different things. For one, There are a lot of big players in our movement in terms of sorry, in terms of our planet's resources, big
Hmm.
companies, individuals, and I think that they have a lot more power than they sometimes will use. And so
Hmm.
I don't know whether it's that we need to talk more to the people who head these places, or whether we need to do consumer pressures or that kind of thing. But a lot of the big players are making decisions that we don't have a lot of say in. And I think
Hmm.
we need to do some work with that. And then um, also getting to know our local areas much better is important, because then we advocate for them when they, like, for example, if we were to know a local area where there might be a rare butterfly living, but then suppose that it somehow got onto a bill or something to that effect, that they want to develop an area like that. If more people know the area for that butterfly, then they might be saying, no, let's not develop it.
Hmm.
So falling in love with the local places. And I can't emphasize that enough, because we think about nature and we think about protecting nature, and we think usually of some place really far away from ourselves with really charismatic megafauna, but
Hmm.
the nature in our own backyards is just as important. And so it's important that we are aware of and advocating for that. Um, and then it's still important, I think, for us to live our lives conscientiously if we can. But like I said, I think a lot more of this is on the big players than we sometimes realize. So,
Hmm. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the panel more in depth. So, conservation and nature journaling. I think that John Muir Laws is going to be I forget. John Muir Laws is doing something, and Roseanne is doing something. Then you, Shane, Aisha, and Anne are all going to be participating.
and Amy.
And and Amy. That's right, Amy Schlesser. Okay, so then like conservation and nature journaling um, is going to be like inserted into the conference, and I think from the inside, it's easy to see the connection. Like as someone who's been nature journaling for so long and all of that, do you think this connection is obvious from the outside
The connection between
between nature journaling and conservation?
that, that's a hard thing to say because I'm biased.
Right, me too.
And so I'm thinking, like, of course it is, but maybe it's maybe it's not. I don't know.
Okay,
That's a good question.
and then here my next question is the practice of do you think the practice of nature journaling by itself, like if someone all they did was just nature journal, do you think that that by itself is doing something for the planet?
Yeah, I do. Um, because it ties into that falling in love with the places around you. And I've heard so many stories about folks who, even if they can't get their family members to nature journal with them, for example, the family members begin to realize that certain things matter to them. And so maybe their family member will see the area that they like to nature journal all the time, and maybe it's that, oh, hey, so and so, that place you like to go to all the time, that flower just bloomed over there. Like the people around us who see us nature journaling begin to pay attention because we're paying attention. And so we are increasing that awareness by doing the nature journaling of the natural world around us. So yeah, I do think that nature journaling is doing something positive, because it's helping the people around us care as well. Or just like sitting on the side of a trail and getting approached by people who are like, "Hey, what are you doing?" That those little pings were raising that kind of awareness. So I do.
So during the panel, what kind of what do you think, what direction do you think the conversation's gonna go in?
I'm not totally sure. It sounded like there's going to be some questions maybe about urban nature, which I'm excited
Mm,
about. I'm excited to learn and talk more about that, about how we can promote an appreciation for urban nature, or for the folks who live within the cities. So it sounds like there's going to be some of that. Also sharing a bit about our work, and then talking about hope. So those should be some interesting topics. I'm especially curious to hear what the other panelists have to say.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so you mentioned the H word. So why don't you say a little bit more about that? Because I'm realizing I didn't have any questions about that, but I think that's an important topic.
So hope.
Yeah, what do you think about hope?
Oh God. Okay. First of all, I have to say this is a really challenging question for me to answer. It's a good question, a very good question. It's that I try. Okay, when it comes to hope, I try to not think about it very much.
Uh-huh.
That
I
sounds
mean,
really
you don't have to have like some kind of answer to this question or anything. So it's just what do you think about it, or how I mean, already what you've said so far is already something. So like don't feel like obligated to have some, strong stance or whatever.
okay. For me, I try not to think about hope overly much. I just try to act. That's my
Mm,
thing. I just try to keep doing things and figuring out if what I did, if there's any part of that that caused harm, then I change that. But I try not to think too much about what I do in terms of the big picture because that'd be overwhelming. Instead, I just try to
yeah.
keep working at things and to trust, maybe in a way that is similar to hope. I try to trust that the things I do matter. I don't know how much they matter or to who they're going to matter, but they will matter on some level. That's sort of where I try to go with that. And I think I'd like to understand hope better. I'd like to learn more about it because I worry when people, for good reason, I think people get very depressed about thinking about the future, and that can be paralyzing. Um, and I worry about people's emotional health when people start thinking about the future, and I can just see how they kind of close in on themselves. So I'd like to learn more about hope and how to increase that in people, so that way, when people feel more hopeful, maybe they'll be more willing to like try things and think that it will work out for the better. So hope's one of those things that I feel like I need to learn more about and appreciate a lot more.
I think on our last conversation, and I'll put this in the chat again, so people definitely should watch this one. But I think when we talked about your how you combine nature journaling with stewardship work, you mentioned that doing something with your hands, like pulling out invasive plants or planting new plants, doing something or picking up trash, that going out and picking up trash on a beach. Just by doing that act, it makes you feel psychologically better and more hopeful. And that if that's what you need to do to like stay in the game and to stay like keep on doing like what you're doing, then that seems like that is a really important thing.
Definitely. And I do feel that way. For me, that is like going and just doing something small, even if it is that small of like picking up the trash, either on the beach or on the street. Um, that is the kind of thing. It's a little boost. It's a lot harder to feel sad or hopeless if you've got that little boost. And
Hmm.
you've always got that thing like I can always do this exact thing, and then you do it, and then it's like having a minor superpower and the superpower
Hmm.
is doing something about it. But then I also know that not everybody's going to feel the same way. Some people might say, oh, just a few pieces of trash, there'll be more tomorrow. I
Hmm.
think a lot of it depends on the M word. And by the M word, I mean mindset. And
Hmm.
that's something that I don't want to go defining that for other people. Rather listen and hear how other people's mindsets work. I can say that mine
Hmm.
works better when I'm out there doing something, even if it's small. Um, but I acknowledge that's not everybody, and that's okay.
Okay. All right. So, which do you think would have a bigger impact if more nature journalers started doing like hands-on conservation or restoration work, or if more people who are doing restoration or conservation work started nature journaling?
Ooh, good question. Um, hmm. Personally, I think it's that first one. I think that if there were more nature journalists who were doing the conservation or restoration hands-on stuff, then I think that would make a much huger impact. Um, because because a lot of folks in nature journaling, by nature journaling, we already are communicating in some way, and we already are connected to a lot of people in our community who might, who might say like, "Oh, what are they doing?" And so, if we are going to be going that extra step and doing that physical stuff, then I think that that will also get a lot of people's attention. Um, with restoration, I could be wrong, but it's that I see that a lot of folks in restoration already seem to have that community, and so we already
Mm,
have the shared value of going and doing this work together. And so I think that that's still like we could definitely um, show a lot of really great things if we were to do nature journaling, but then we might, I'm not sure, like what I would want to know is how to get that work and that word outside of our community that we already have with the restoration. So, but I would have to think about that. It's a matter of, in my mind, it's a matter of making more communities have cross cultural connections with them.
mm,
So I definitely have to think about that question more. Or
okay.
unless I can say the answer, "¿Por qué no los dos?" And
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. So for someone who showed up to Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference just for the art classes, how would you encourage them to watch this panel on conservation and nature journaling? Like someone's, they're looking through the schedule, there's a ton of different classes, how to make these like watercolor flower paintings. Why should they make the time to go to listen to you and everybody else talk about the conservation and nature journaling connection?
maybe for, okay, I'm going to bring it back to what you'd said, maybe for that reason of hope. Maybe by seeing other people doing this work, then they might feel that sense of hope. Also, I think that one of the things we're going to be answering in the panel is how other people can do the work we do. So if people would be interested in joining in that kind of thing, then that might be a good reason to watch the panel or to give ideas of something that they might be interested in doing. Um, so those would be a few of my reasons for why, but number one would be hope.
Cool. Okay, and then last question around the panel is when people leave the panel. So, like, say that person who thought the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference was just going to be about art, but they did decide to go to this panel. How are they going to be different, or what are they going to leave with?
Good question. Maybe with inspiration, that they can also combine their nature journaling practice with stewardship or with conservation, or maybe with a few ideas of links that they'd like to reach out to and see what's next. Or I'm not sure. Maybe we'll get them so fired up that they're like, "What's next? What can I do next?" Kind of the way that Doug Tallamy got a bunch of people fired up last year about creating their own homegrown national parks.
Mm,
So, any number of those things. Or I hope that maybe they'll leave with questions.
mm,
I'm hoping that they'll also leave with questions about how can this become a thing that we are more widely practicing? How can this become a community value? How can we do this kind of work in a way that accesses more people? How can we make this kind of work more accessible so that it's not like in some obscure place that people have to go to in order to do conservation? So yeah, I'm hoping any of these reactions,
cool.
anything but going back to sleep.
All right, great. I'm gonna just check the comments here and say hi to people. Looks like Eleni is on Facebook watching. Susan B is here, and Cindy is here. If you're watching this show live, post something in the chat. Ask if you have any questions or comments on this topic. Okay, let's talk about Pencil Miles and Chill,
All right.
specifically the version at the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference. Could you just paint a picture of what it is?
Okay. So you see on the schedule that there is an invitation for a 55 or so minute social hour called Pencil Miles and Chill. You enter in, you see that there's about 100 other people there with you. You see this weirdo talking to you. And I'm telling you that in a few minutes, you get to go to breakout rooms to meet with other people. You do a mad scramble to figure out where the breakout rooms are, and then you read down the list and you see all of these different topics. How will you choose? That's the fun part. You can choose one, you can come back to the main room and choose another. Each breakout room will be a different topic, and we take suggestions so that way the next day we can have topics that you suggest. The idea with this is that you will meet other nature journalers from all over the world who have common interests that you do. You might get inspiration for new things to put into your art toolkits. You might be able to talk about how much y'all love birds. You might be able to get into some deeper conversations, like how to make nature journaling more accessible to folks in different communities. You might get to meet an instructor if the instructor decides to host a breakout room. So the idea with this is that you get to talk face to face with people after having spent a couple of hours learning some cool classes, but only doing so in I can't remember what the word is. I think I want to say like seminar mode or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm,
It's the one where you can't really talk to each other. So
mm-hmm,
for about 55 minutes, you get to see human faces and you get to interact with human faces. And and at the end of that time, you get a few more links about how you can go and continue having community after the Wild Wonder Conference is over.
mm. Okay, so what should people know about it?
We're going to try to send out a link in advance about how to get into the breakout rooms. That's usually the part where people have the most trouble is figuring out how to navigate them. The things to know are that this space is for you first and foremost. It's for the community members. Secondly, that it doesn't get recorded. So if you don't go, that's okay. But there's not recordings to look at later on because everybody's in breakout rooms. And also because we want to respect our participants' confidentiality. Also, that bring your enthusiasm, but also remember to make space for others to talk as well.
Mm.
So we want to make sure that as many different people get to talk in these breakout rooms as possible. And to don't be afraid to make connections. If there's somebody cool you met in that breakout room, PM them and say, hey, you want to exchange contact information? Because we're not allowed to do that on your behalf, but you can. You can talk to them and say, hey, let's exchange contact information. Let's stay in touch. You might meet some really, really cool people who become your friends long after the conference.
So you hinted at this already, but what can happen in Pencil Miles and Chill that can't happen in other parts of the conference?
Face-to-face interactions or screen-to-screen interact. We're talking to each other.
Right.
You can see people, you can hear people, you have conversations, and you can make those kind of community connections and figure out like how to see each other again afterwards. Or you might get advice or help directly from people. If, like, for example, suppose we had a breakout room that's all about people who want to start their own nature journal clubs. Then you might have a mix of people, some who have already done that and some who haven't. But then if you're nervous about it, you could get support or ideas from other people in that breakout room. So
Cool. Is it worth sacrificing sleep to be at Pencil Miles and Chill or at the Backstage Pass?
I'm biased, so I say yes, but that's because I will be doing that. I'd say maybe don't sacrifice your sleep, but like it's tempting to want to go to every single class in Wild Wonder. The good news is that all of the other classes, with the exception of those two, are recorded. So if you can sacrifice one of the classes live that day to go to Pencil Mouse and Chill, I'd say do that. Because you'll get to see the other class again later, but you won't get to have Pencil Mouse and Chill later in the same way. So I'd recommend that.
Could you explain a little bit about the difference between the Backstage Pass and Pencil Miles and Chill, differences and similarities?
Okay. So the similarities are that you still get to, like, you're talking to everybody, you get to see everybody's faces in real time. The differences are that with Pencil Miles and Chill, everybody will go to the breakout rooms so that way you get smaller groups of people able to connect with each other more. In the Backstage Pass, it's very cozy because you get to have everybody there all at once. And in that way, it's good because you're not feeling separated from the entire group of people. Jack leads the Backstage Passes, and anybody who's been in discussions with him know how warm he is and how inclusive he is and like how much he gets excited about people. So on the one hand, like you get everybody together at the Backstage Passes. On the other, because it's like something like 60 plus people in the one room, it's unlikely that everybody gets a chance to speak.
Hmm.
So if you're wanting time to have more one-on-one connections, you get that at Pencil Miles and Chill. And then if you want time to just like really enjoy being part of the full group, then you go to Backstage Pass. And personally, I go to both. So
Cool. Yvea, that was super valuable. And for everybody who's watching, the whole idea of all of these interviews is to help give you guys, for all of you all, to get an idea of like how this conference works, a lot of pro tips. This is information that has taken, like, Yvea and I have gone to all of these things. It's been like years building up this information and knowledge. If you're getting value from this, please consider giving a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and potentially subscribing to my Patreon, because both Yvea and I do a ton of work like this, creating value for you all, and we don't get paid for a lot of the work that we do. So I usually don't plug my Patreon or anything like that during the show, but I'm going to right now. So because I just feel like Yvea just gave a ton of value, and I feel like the whole reason of doing these interviews is to try to provide value and let you all know as much as possible, inform you about this conference and everything that's going on. And I think understanding Pencil Miles and Chill and understanding the Backstage Pass is super useful, because you could go to this conference, you could pay money to go to this conference, and you can miss those parts. And I really think they're some of the most powerful parts of the whole conference. So thank you so much for sharing that.
sure thing. Just a quick thing.
Yes.
Two quick things. First, to answer Cindy's question in the chat, agree the Backstage Pass is also not recorded. So neither
Mm-hmm.
Pencil Mouse and Chill nor Backstage Pass are recorded. No, we don't record any of the live
Mm-hmm.
face-to-face interaction community hours. And two, also want to support what Marley just said. Marley's done so much work to create this content for the past 4+ years, since even before the Nature Journal show began, but especially over the last 4+ years. And I'm a very proud Patreon supporter of Marley, just because of all of the incredible work that you do. So
Thanks, Yvea.
hope other folks will support you as well.
Cool, thanks. All right, and then I have two other questions about pencil miles and chill. Um, uh, do you have any funny stories that you feel like you could share from past pencil miles and chill?
Yeah.
Like, not necessarily like going into details or giving people's names or anything, but if there's any funny stories.
Well, okay, this one is a bit more about the tech, so apologies in advance. Let's just say that sometimes Zoom is a little much. And the very first year of Pencil Miles and Chill, I'm leading this, I'm all green and leading this, and I'm all nervous. And I've got some really fantastic moderators, by the way. I love my moderators. Every year I've got such amazing moderators, and I love you all. So the first year, one of my moderators was helping me figure this out. We would go to this one breakout room. I don't remember what one it was called. I'm going to just pretend it was like breakout room 4 or something like that. And we'd be in there, and everybody there is smiling very awkwardly, and somebody is talking about their pens, except that the voice is coming from somebody who's not in that room. So everybody's sitting there. They can't interrupt because the person who's talking about the pens can't hear them, and they can't talk to each other because this person keeps talking about their pens. And they're like, her pens sound very lovely, but we can't have a conversation with her. We eventually found out that the person in question was in room 13. We have no idea how the voice thing got transferred, and Brian
Whoa.
Higginbotham had to figure out how to uncouple whatever was going on there. But I don't remember what room it was, but I call that more or less the room 4 incident. Yeah.
Weird. So someone that was in a completely separate breakout room, their voice was coming through into the other one.
Yep. And they couldn't hear anything else. Like they could not hear anybody in room 4 responding to them. And room 4
Whoa.
was like, yeah, this
It's
is,
it's like a Zoom ghost.
yes, it was.
Wow. Okay, and then my last question about Pencil Miles and Chill is, what would Pencil Miles and Chill look like if the conference were in person again?
Ooh, good question. I am honestly not sure. My guess is that we'd have some volunteer, either instructors or moderators, who would maybe people would sign up in advance for a room that they wanted to be part of, and then people would leave and do that. But then I wonder how that would work with people being able to switch out of the rooms if they wanted to. Maybe it'd be that we all just kind of go into separate corners of the rooms, and then some people kind of shift around. I don't know. I'm
Hmm,
not sure how that would look in person, but I'd be curious to know. I'd be curious to think more about that, and also to hear ideas.
cool. Okay, should we do more Wild Wonder questions or should we go to the lightning round?
Your call, Marley. What would you prefer?
I don't know. Let's see if anyone in the audience, should we do a couple more Wild Wonder questions or should we go to the lightning round? Let's see if anyone who's in the live chat has a suggestion. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Maybe there's a lag. Let's go to the lightning round. I'll save these ones for later. Okay. Uh-oh. Someone just posted more Wild Wonder questions. Okay, we'll go with that. All right, so a few more questions about Wild Wonder. Are you planning on taking any classes or attending any keynotes? You already sort of answered that, right?
I might do the unhealthy thing, which somebody else I know also does, and attend them all. Yeah, you. Yeah. I might be right up there with Marley, attending them all and losing sleep. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any stories about past experiences at Wild Wonder that you want to share?
Um, I'm trying to think if I'm allowed to share these.
Oh, okay. If you're not allowed to, don't share it.
Maybe not. Let's just say that I've always had a great deal of fun, and that these things are better when you have a friend to talk to along the way about yeah. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Were you there the time in the backstage pass where someone was playing the guitar and then uh we found out what time zone he was in, and it was 3 in the morning, and he's in his parents' house playing the guitar in the backstage.
Maybe okay, I'm pretty sure I was there, but there's been so many guitar players, so I'm
Oh,
wondering,
really?
are
No,
you
I'm thinking of Ray Bonto.
oh, yeah, I remember when Ray Bonto was playing the sitar at one point as well. Yeah,
Oh, I missed that one.
yeah, I remember Ray Bonto playing his instrument. I remember Anne Chadwick playing. I remember another person named Jack playing as well, Jack
Hmm.
Copey, I think. So yeah, there's been different guitar players, and it's been so lovely. I love it when they finish out the night with the guitars. Okay, yeah, that's definitely an experience I'd want to talk about in the backstage passes.
So, what is your top tip for someone who has never been to the conference before?
Go easy on yourself. It's okay. Don't do what me and Marley do. It's okay to skip classes. It's totally okay to skip classes. It's important to get up and walk around and drink water and nap and we have such a fear of missing out, but we don't have to. Fully enjoy the moments that you're present there at the conference, and then if you need to take a break, then that's okay. Yeah.
Great. Okay, now let's do the lightning round.
Okay.
Can you make a lightning sound?
But I've heard the answer to this one. The lightning itself doesn't make a sound. It's the thunder.
Oh, okay. Well, same thing. Oh,
I had to wait for the lightning to show up.
nice. All right. So, is coffee an essential art supply?
Nah.
Fast or slow?
Fast.
Birds or bugs?
Bugs.
Organized or messy?
Messy.
Nature journaling alone or with other people?
Preferably with other people. But I
Sna-
like both. I like both.
snacks?
Yeah.
Are you a perfectionist?
Sometimes at the worst possible times.
Uh-oh.
But
Ink
less so.
or graphite?
Okay, I know I'm supposed to say ink, but graphite, honestly.
Supposed to.
Yeah, because the graphite smears everywhere when I use it, but it's more
Oh.
enjoyable. I like the graphite more.
I mean, Fernando Bautista chose graphite, so
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, and he's the one from National Geographic, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I don't feel like so weird anymore. Cool.
When it comes to art supplies, do you maximize or minimize?
I try to minimize.
Experiment or refine?
What a question. Ooh, experiment.
Generalist or specialist?
Hmm. Do you mean in terms of subject or in terms of journaling practices?
Just go with your first gut answer.
Generalist?
Rule breaker or rule maker?
Definitely rule breaker.
Big picture or micro?
Big picture.
Jungle or desert?
Desert.
What face do you make when you're out nature journaling and someone comes up and says, "You are so talented, I could never do that"?
I make this exact face because I'm thinking about your reaction. I'm sorry. I'm like, I wonder what Marley would do.
All right, folks, put your answers to your favorite lightning round questions into the live chat. All right, Yvea, if you could have a nature journaling superpower, what superpower would you have?
Ooh, what a good question. Um, hmm. Mm, speed writing, so that I could write down even more of my thoughts and ideas in my nature journal.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, if you could get in a time machine and go anywhere in time, past, present, future, where would you want to go to nature journal?
Oh, okay. I would definitely want to go to 1935, the Presidio sand dunes, wherever
Mm,
the Xerces butterfly lives,
mm,
because
wow.
they die off in 1940. So I'd want to go 5 years before they die, so that I could research them.
Wow, that's really cool. And if you could only bring 5 nature journaling supplies and 1 snack with you, that's all you can fit in the time machine. What would you take?
Oh, okay. Oh, that throws a monkey wrench in my original answer. Okay, so obviously the nature journal. Um, pen, because at least it won't smudge. Watercolor kit, water brush. I would have I would have taken a leaf out of Kate Rutter's book and said a trash bag, because
Mm.
that's my thing. But then we're talking about going back to 1930s, and I'm not sure that they're going to have as much trash lying around everywhere. So, mm, my Kestrel. I bring my Kestrel.
Cool. All right. In the nature journaling Olympics, which event would you participate in?
Oh, I like this one. I think my answer is the same. I would participate in the asking questions Olympics, and I would very cheerfully lose to Fiona Galogli.
Nice. And then last lightning round question is, which animal species would be best at nature journaling?
Ooh, which animal species? Okay, I'm biased. Octopus, I think. Mostly,
Nice.
mostly not just because they, I could imagine them with all of their lovely arms doing a bunch of things, but also because I am convinced that octopi have a sense of humor. I'd like to see how that expressed itself in a nature journal.
That's a good one. I have a very good image of that in my mind right now. Yay, good job in the lightning round. Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the face that you make when people come up to you and say you're very talented?
Um, hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for satisfying my curiosity.
It probably depends. It depends on how much chocolate, how my chocolate levels are in my system.
That's right. Oh, that's right. You said I could bring a snack on the time machine.
Yeah, that's right. What snack were you gonna bring?
Oh, I know. I know. I'll bring a pint of ice cream. Okay, I'm good. Yeah,
There you go. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your personal nature journaling practice and how and what it looks like. Just I think sometimes for people it's cool to know how other people nature journal, what their practice looks like, because then they I think sometimes people worry like, oh, I don't nature journal enough, or like, oh, I don't do this, or oh, I don't go to these like crazy places, or I don't make enough drawings or pretty pictures or whatever, like. So I think it's useful just to get a lot of ideas of how other people go about it. So could you talk a little bit about your practice, or anything like frequency, or things like that, goals that you set for yourself?
absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up. When I was getting started out back in 2017, that was my fear as well. At the time, my son was a great deal younger, and I felt like because I couldn't just go and spend an entire day in a crazy wild area, and because I felt very self-conscious, and I wondered if I was a real nature journaler. And so back then, I made an agreement with myself: if I just had 3 minutes to nature journal, then I'd make use of those 3 minutes.
Hmm.
And so I would begin to do that, not filling up the full page. That's okay. I'd leave myself inquiries to come back to, and some pages will have multiple dates on them. So my style is a lot more flexible now, and that I want to nature journal what I'm passionate about or what is striking me as being interesting. And so I try to not give myself as many rules when I nature journal. For example, some days if I want it to be all about the questions, and that's what shows up on my page. Some days I will want to like play around with the colors, and so I'll do that. Um, I think part of what helps is that I realized that I think that sharing journals is a really great thing because then we can see and celebrate each other's work and learn from each other. But I realized that for me, it led to more comparisons than I wanted it to. And I realized that from a mindset perspective that that wasn't healthy for me. And it had nothing to do with the practice of sharing, but just more like how I would react to it internally. So I will still go and look at everybody else's journals, but I very rarely share mine now when
Mm,
it's time to sit down and do that. And I've noticed it's made a huge change for me. It's made
mm,
me less afraid to do what I want to do in my nature journal because I don't have eyes. I don't have this thought that there are going to be eyes eventually seeing my pages, and I have a lot more fun that way. So that's more my style. I do anything from rubbings in my journals if I want to the really fun thing where you do the negative space painting around. I'll do really like silly cartooning. I don't care how my cartoons look to me. It's the ideas behind them that are funny to me. Um, there are times where I don't get to nature journal very much because there's a lot going on in life. And my plan for that, which I'm going through one of those periods now, is to give myself just a little time each day to do something I'm excited about. So later on, maybe I'll go and sit in the garden and I'll look and see how many different bugs land on the carrot flowers. I don't know. We'll find out. But my style is to go easy on yourself.
Mm. I think the part you said about the journal shares, the potential like negative side effect of journal shares is super interesting, and I want to delve into that more at some point because I think that one thing I've noticed is that if I'm trying to do this as like my career, I'm trying to like grow my followers on social media. It's a struggle, it's hard. And then if all of my like if everything I do in my nature journal page is something that I'm trying to make into like a post online, it it's very common for that to be the case, or like every outing I do, I'm like, oh, I should make a video while I'm out here nature journaling. But what I've realized is that I need to have like a certain percentage of my nature journaling time that is not going to get posted anywhere, because and some of my art time also just not going to get posted anywhere, because that's how I can like keep it going. Because if everything that I do is something that has to get posted or whatever, that is psychologically kind of crushing. And it's a real hard balance when trying to do it like professionally. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's and I think that'll be helpful for a lot of people watching or listening to this, is to realize that um, sometimes looking at other people's stuff or sharing your stuff with others is not can have these complicated effects on our mindset. So
Yeah.
yeah.
May I think there's one thing I will add. There have been some times though where I've learned a different way of sharing that oftentimes brings me great joy. And also it helps because it's not the sort of thing where I plan to regularly have. It's sort of like opportunity falls in my lap. If I've been one-on-one with a friend and we exchange nature journals, then sometimes that can be a great deal more joyful,
Mm,
because then it's not about comparisons. It's not about looking and seeing whose journal and in a big circle is getting the most attention or anything. It really is about going and looking into each other's spaces and journeys within their journals. Um, and and I noticed that when it's just me and one friend and we're swapping, I worry a lot less about what they think of my journal because I'm so busy engaging in their adventures, and
mm,
it feels like it's a lot more reciprocal. So I just wanted to point that out as well. That would
cool.
be, if we do desire to share, then that might be a gentler way where it feels a lot less like you have to be post worthy.
Hmm. All right, let's talk a little bit about let's wrap thing we kind of got into the hard stuff like right at the beginning. We've gotten to some more fun stuff. Now let's go a little bit back into some of the hard stuff around conservation. I brought up, this is some stuff I talked about with Robin Lee Carlson not that long ago, and climate change, mass extinction, Anthropocene. Let's go there because I think it's important, and it's easy to pretend like we're not living during this during one of the like six biggest extinctions on the planet. But what do you think it means to be a nature journaler during this particular time in history?
I think it means that we're bearing witness. We're bearing witness to, even in spite of our best efforts, we're going to see a lot of death. And that's painful. That's very painful. Um, we're bearing witness to this. We might be lucky and being able to also bear witness to hope. I'd like that idea of us bearing witness to hope. It means that we're telling stories that maybe would be easier to look away from and ignore. Um, Maybe it means that we are able to affect some amount of change by telling these stories and by documenting these stories, because then other people will see them and maybe think that it's not too late to do something. Or maybe it's one of those things where we'll be journaling what we're seeing, and as we journal it, we'll be struck by this idea of what we could do to make it different because we're right there in the spot and seeing what is needed. So it could be a lot of different things. We could be witnessing a lot of despair, but we could be witnessing maybe something better or better possibilities. And it's sobering, though, to consider that. It's sobering to consider what we might or might not be seeing again in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think we live at an amazing time in the history of the planet. Like biodiversity has basically been increasing for billions of years, and so there have been these like major extinction events, and it's bounced back. So the fact that if you look at overall planetary history, we still, even though lots of extinctions have been happening in our time period, we still live at a time where there's so many different amazing things on the planet that it almost feels like it's our responsibility to, as nature journalers, to be like, wow, look at what we have, and to know that some of it might not be around. So um, why do you think this topic is so hard and so scary?
I think because in a lot of ways, both literally and also figuratively, it involves death. Death scares us or makes us sad because death seems permanent and is in a lot of cases. But maybe that's another thing, is that maybe there's a little bit that's different here about like what you said about biodiversity increasing for billions of years. Evolution hasn't stopped. There's still species, being created right, or
Mhm.
coming into being right now because of the way that our genetics are working. There's adaptations being made every moment. Life is still growing. Life will always grow as long as there's life to grow. And so it's not quite death. Maybe a lot of it could be death, but it's not all death. We're watching life continue as well. So I think that maybe when we associate this whole with death, then it becomes frightening and hard to look at, and also a sense maybe of shame because so much of this is human driven, and so I think that that's hard to
Mm,
look at too.
yeah, that's so interesting. So I think like there's a couple directions that we can go in with this. So it's like I'm out there nature journaling. Maybe I just learned about nature journaling. I love the art aspect of it. I love, getting outside and like looking at things and learning about things in nature. Then I see something or hear something about like all of this bad stuff that's happening. There's like a die off in the San Francisco Bay, and
Yeah.
I don't instead of I have a couple options, right? Like I could point my nature journal. Nature journaling is a tool. It's a way for learning and observing and whatever. I could point it at that thing that's happening, or I could be like, maybe I'll just look up some, bird pictures online and just like draw those, or like look at some like flowers in my garden or whatever. Or another option would be to change hobbies. Like, how do you think people can you know maybe ease into somehow using their nature? Maybe the nature journal can be a way to process grief or something. How do you see this like tendency we might have of like avoiding with our nature journals?
That's a really good question because I could definitely understand that. We might say, but nature journaling is meant to be more therapeutic in my personal life, and we might turn away because that is much to process. So I could definitely see that being a route that folks take. Another thing is that if folks are looking and pointing their journals more towards that thing to help them process that's going on, it might also help if it's done more in community, or you have at least enough
Mm.
supports, because looking alone to witness things like that could be really frightening for folks. So if you're looking, even with a small group of other people, sorry, I'm
That's a
getting
really good point. Yeah, drink some water and I can just riff off of that. So let me see if I got this idea. Maybe like you could almost practically form like a nature journal club or something like that. Or it could be like a breakout group in Pencil Miles and Chill, or it could be like a virtual group or something. And you're like, this group of nature journalers, we're specifically going to nature journal some of these challenging things, such as like habitat destruction. We're specifically intentionally going to go to places that maybe was like a forest when we were a child, and has been bulldozed and has got a Walmart put on top of it. And we're going to go to those places together and nature journal them together, or places where there's been like an oil spill, or places where there's been clear cutting of a forest, and we're going to go there and nature journal together, because it'll be emotionally safer in that group.
Yeah, I could see that. Also, I admit I don't know much about about this myself, but I've also been told that there's a lot more awareness now of ecological grief, and I'm wondering if there might be
Mm.
counselors or people who might be like more versed in mental health who might be able to help people cope more with that as well, and
Yeah.
your ways of coping, and if
When
nature's a
I
tool within that.
Yeah, I interviewed Rosemary Moscow like a week ago, and she said that she was going to a therapist that was a climate change informed or climate change sensitive therapist. And so it could be there's underlying stuff that we need to work through on our own. But yeah, I'm really excited. I kind of want to start a nature journaling club that is like specifically about that, because I think that your idea that doing it together with other people is much safer and less scary.
I'll
Okay,
join.
cool,
I'll join.
cool. All right, great. Okay, so we're basically at the end of our time here. So my last question is, what do you think the future of nature journaling is?
I think I think it's gonna continue in a lot of what we have now where people go out and find nature and fall in love. But I feel like as the community grows and as we talk more and more about conservation, then that other option too of, okay, we've fallen in love. Let's see what we can do with that love. I feel like that's going to become a lot more of an option for people as well. I think we're going to grow different ways that people can go and get involved into transforming that love into protective action.
Great. All right, everybody. Yvea's got a lot of really cool content on her Instagram. I'm going to put your YouTube up here as well. Um, and I'll type these into the chat. So please go check out what Yvea is doing on Instagram and on YouTube. She's got a bunch of really great botany stuff. Oh, I still have the other botany. Yep, and your website too.
Susan Beckhart would know about my plant rants. You can see some of them on my YouTube.
Well, Yvea, thanks so much for making the time to be on the show again, and I can't wait for your panel and Pencil Miles and Chill at Wild Wonder 2024.
I'm looking forward to seeing you there. You're always wonderful at leading really cool discussions at Pencil Miles and Chill. And I'm looking forward to your class. So yeah, folks, if you want to be in conversation with Marley Pfeiffer during Pencil Miles and Chill, please join Pencil Miles and Chill. He leads the best discussions. And
My main goal in those is to not talk, because I get a lot of opportunities to talk. So when I'm in a session and Pencil Miles, I don't want to be talking. I want to try to make it so that a lot of people can talk. What I do is I regulate on people who are talking too much. That's what I do.
I highly recommend folks join.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.